The drought had already claimed her husband, her cattle, and nearly every ounce of hope Tessa Morgan had left, but she would be damned if she let it take her pride too. She stood in the Mercantile in Westcliff, Colorado, on a scorching afternoon in July of 1878, counting out the last few coins from her purse with trembling fingers. The storekeeper, Mr. Henderson, watched with barely concealed impatience as she tried to calculate whether she had enough for both flour and coffee beans. The summer sun beat down mercilessly outside, turning the high mountain valley into a furnace despite its elevation. 3 years of insufficient snowmelt had left the streams running low and the grass brown and brittle. Her small ranch 5 miles north of town was slowly dying, and she was dying right along with it. "That will be $2.15, Mr. Henderson said, his voice clipped and businesslike. Tessa looked down at the coins in her palm. $1.60. Her throat tightened, but she kept her chin high and her shoulders back. "I will take just the flour then," she said, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning through her chest. "Suit yourself." Mr. Henderson wrapped the flour in brown paper without another word. She tucked the package under her arm and walked out into the blazing afternoon, her worn boots kicking up dust with each step. Her wagon waited at the hitching post, the wood bleached gray from years of sun and weather. The 2 mules hitched to it looked as tired and worn as she felt. She had sold her horse 3 months ago to pay the bank note, and these mules were all she had left for transportation. Tessa climbed onto the wagon seat and unwrapped the reins from the brake handle. Her hands were rough and calloused, the hands of a woman who had worked herself to the bone trying to keep a failing ranch afloat. She was 24 years old but felt ancient. Her husband, Samuel, had died 2 winters ago when he went out during a blizzard to check on the cattle and never came back. They found him 3 days later, frozen solid, just 100 yards from the barn. He had gotten turned around in the whiteout and walked in the wrong direction. Since then, she had tried to manage everything alone. The cattle had dwindled from 60 head to 12. The vegetable garden had withered in the relentless heat. The well was running dangerously low, but she refused to ask for help, refused to admit defeat, refused to be seen as weak or incapable. She was about to snap the reins when a voice called out behind her. "Excuse me, madam." Tessa turned to see a tall man in dusty range clothes walking toward her wagon. He had broad shoulders, sun-bronzed skin, and eyes the color of a summer sky. A battered hat shaded his face, and a bandana hung loosely around his neck. He moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin, someone who knew exactly who he was and where he belonged in the world. "Yes," she said, her tone wary. He stopped beside the wagon and looked up at her, squinting slightly against the sun. "Name is Cole Wheeler. I am passing through town looking for work, and I heard you might need a hand at your place." Tessa stiffened. "You heard wrong." Cole tilted his head slightly, studying her with those clear blue eyes. "I saw you in the Mercantile just now. Saw you counting your coins. No shame in needing help, madam." Heat flooded her cheeks, a combination of embarrassment and anger. "I did not ask for your opinion or your assistance, Mr. Wheeler. I am managing just fine on my own." "Are you?" The simple question hit her like a physical blow. She wanted to snap back at him, to tell him to mind his own business, to drive away and leave him standing in the dust. But something in his expression stopped her. There was no judgment there, no pity, no condescension, just honest curiosity and what looked like genuine concern. "Yes," she said firmly. "I am." Cole nodded slowly. "All right then. But if you change your mind, I will be at the boarding house for the next few days. Mrs. Patterson's place on 3rd Street. Without waiting for a response, he touched the brim of his hat and walked away. Tessa watched him go, her emotions churning. Part of her wanted to call him back, to accept whatever help he was offering. But her pride was a fortress she had built around herself, and she was not about to let it crumble now. She drove the mules out of town, following the rutted road that led north through the valley. Mountains rose on either side, their peaks still holding patches of snow despite the summer heat. Westcliff sat at nearly 8,000 feet elevation, high in the wet mountain valley of southern Colorado. It was beautiful country, harsh and unforgiving but beautiful nonetheless. The kind of place that could break you if you were not strong enough. The ride home took nearly an hour. By the time Tessa reached her ranch, the sun was lowering toward the western peaks, casting long shadows across the parched land. The ranch was small, just a simple cabin, a barn, and a few outbuildings. Samuel had built most of it with his own hands, and every board and nail reminded her of him. Sometimes she could still hear his laugh echoing across the yard, still see him walking toward her with that crooked smile he always wore. She unhitched the mules and led them to the barn, giving them each a small portion of hay. The hay supply was running low, too. Everything was running low. She carried the flour into the cabin and set it on the rough wooden counter Samuel had built. The cabin was tidy but sparse, containing only the essentials: a cast iron stove, a table with 2 chairs, a rocking chair by the fireplace, and a bed in the corner. No luxuries, no frills, nothing extra. Tessa lit the stove and made herself a simple dinner of beans and cornbread. She ate alone at the table, the silence pressing down on her like a weight. After washing her single plate and fork, she stepped outside to watch the sunset. The sky blazed with orange and pink and purple, a spectacular show that happened almost every evening. Samuel used to sit with her on the porch step and watch the sunsets. He would put his arm around her shoulders and pull her close, and they would sit in comfortable silence as the day faded into night. Now she sat alone, hugging her knees to her chest, feeling the loneliness like a physical ache in her bones. The next morning, Tessa woke before dawn and immediately got to work. She fed the mules, checked on the cattle that were grazing in the sparse pasture, and then spent 2 hours trying to repair a section of fence that had fallen down. The work was back-breaking, and by mid-morning she was soaked with sweat and trembling with exhaustion. But she kept going. She always kept going. Around noon, she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching. She looked up from the fence post she was trying to set and saw a rider coming up the road. Her stomach sank when she recognized Cole Wheeler sitting easy in the saddle on a big sorrel gelding. He reined in near where she was working and dismounted. "Afternoon, madam, Mr. Wheeler." Her voice was cool. "I thought I made myself clear yesterday." "You did." He walked over and examined the fence she was working on. "But I figured I would ride out this way anyway. Been looking at some of the other ranches in the area, seeing if anyone needs help." "And do they?" "A few might." He glanced at her, then at the fence post. "That post is not going to hold if you set it that way. The ground is too dry. You need to dig deeper and pack it with stones." Tessa gritted her teeth. "I know how to set a fence post." "Did not say you did not. Just saying this particular ground needs a different approach." He knelt beside the hole she had dug and began scooping out more dirt with his bare hands. "Mind if I help?" "Yes, I do mind." He kept digging anyway. "Too bad. I am already here and my hands are already dirty." She should have been furious. She should have ordered him off her property. But instead, she found herself watching him work with a mixture of exasperation and reluctant admiration. He moved with practiced efficiency, his strong hands making quick work of the hard, packed earth. Within minutes, he had deepened the hole considerably. "You got any rocks around here?" he asked, looking up at her. Tessa pointed toward a pile of stones near the barn. Over there. Cole fetched an armload of rocks and began placing them in the hole around the post. "Hold this steady for me," he said, indicating the post. She hesitated, then grasped the post with both hands, holding it upright while he packed the rocks and dirt around the base. His shoulder brushed against hers as he worked, and she caught the scent of leather and horse and something else, something clean and masculine that made her heart skip in a way she had not felt in a very long time. When the post was secure, Cole stood and brushed the dirt from his hands. "There. That should hold through the winter." "Thank you," Tessa said stiffly, "but I did not ask for your help and I cannot pay you, did not ask for payment." "Then why are you here?" He looked at her with those clear blue eyes, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words and unnamed emotions. "Because you need help," he said finally, "and because I think you are too stubborn to ask for it." Her anger flared hot and bright. "You do not know anything about me. I know enough." His voice was gentle but firm. "I know you are out here alone, trying to keep this place running with no help and no resources. I know you are working yourself into the ground, and I know you are too proud to admit that you are drowning." The words struck too close to home. Tessa felt her eyes burn with sudden tears, and she turned away quickly so he would not see. "I am fine." "No, you are not. Get off my property." Her voice shook despite her best efforts to keep it steady. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said softly, "All right. But I will be back tomorrow to check on you. Do not bother." "I will anyway." She heard him mount his horse and ride away, but she did not turn around. She stood there by the fence, her hands clenched into fists, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. She would not cry. She would not break. She would not give in. But that night, lying alone in her bed, she finally let the tears come. They soaked into her pillow as she wept for her dead husband, for her dying ranch, for the crushing loneliness that was slowly suffocating her. She cried until she had no tears left, and then she lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much longer she could keep pretending that everything was fine. Cole came back the next day, just as he had promised, and the day after that, and the day after that. Each time, Tessa told him to leave. Each time he ignored her and found some task that needed doing. He repaired the barn door that had been hanging crooked for months. He cleared the debris from the irrigation ditch. He patched a hole in the cabin roof. He never asked permission, never demanded payment, never made her feel small or incapable. After a week of this, Tessa finally confronted him. He was in the barn, mucking out the stalls, when she marched in and planted herself in front of him. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. Cole leaned on the pitchfork and wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Doing what? This? Coming here every day, working for free? Why?" He considered the question for a moment. "You ever been in a situation where you needed help but did not know how to ask for it? That is not an answer." "Sure it is." He went back to shoveling manure. "Few years back, I was working a ranch down in New Mexico, got thrown from a horse and broke my leg. Boss fired me on the spot, said he did not have time for a cowboy who could not ride. I was stuck in a town where I did not know anybody, no money, no job, no way to get home. A family took me in, let me sleep in their barn, fed me, took care of me until my leg healed. Did not ask for anything in return, just helped because I needed help." Tessa crossed her arms over her chest. "And you think you are repaying that debt by helping me?" "No." He looked at her directly. "I am paying it forward. That is what the man who helped me said. He said the only payment he wanted was for me to help someone else when they needed it, so that is what I am doing." She did not know what to say to that. The anger that had been sustaining her for so long seemed to deflate, leaving her feeling empty and exhausted. "I cannot pay you," she said again, but this time her voice was quieter, less certain. "Did not ask you to. I cannot even feed you properly. I brought my own supplies. Got a camp set up down by the creek. You have been camping by my creek." Seemed easier than riding back to town every night. He grinned at her, and she felt something shift in her chest, something warm and unexpected. "Besides, it is prettier out here than in town." Despite herself, Tessa felt the corners of her mouth twitch upward. It was the first time she had smiled in months, maybe longer. "You are the most stubborn man I have ever met. Coming from you, I will take that as a compliment." This time she did smile, a real smile, and she saw his eyes light up in response. For just a moment, the weight she had been carrying felt a little bit lighter. Over the following weeks, a routine developed. Cole would arrive each morning just after sunrise and work until evening. Tessa stopped protesting and instead found herself working alongside him. They repaired fences, hauled water from the creek to supplement the failing well, and moved the cattle to a higher pasture where the grass was slightly better. Cole had a way with animals, and under his care, the mules seemed to gain new energy and the cattle started to look healthier. They did not talk much while they worked, but the silence between them was comfortable rather than awkward. Sometimes Cole would tell stories about places he had been or people he had met, and Tessa would find herself laughing at his dry humor and easy way with words. Other times, she would talk about Samuel, about the dreams they had shared for the ranch, about how much she missed him. Cole never interrupted, never tried to fix her grief, just listened with patient understanding. One evening in early August, Tessa surprised herself by inviting Cole to stay for dinner. She had made a pot of stew with some venison that a neighbor had given her, and there was more than enough for 2 people. Cole accepted the invitation with a smile and washed up at the pump outside before coming into the cabin. It felt strange to have a man at her table again, strange but not unpleasant. They ate in companionable silence for a while, and then Cole said, "This is really good, best meal I have had in a long time. It is just stew. Maybe, but it is made with care. That makes a difference." Tessa felt warmth spread through her chest at the compliment. She had forgotten what it felt like to be appreciated, to have someone notice the small efforts she made. After dinner, they sat on the porch and watched the sunset. The sky was particularly spectacular that evening, streaked with vivid shades of red and gold. Cole sat on the step beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, but not so close as to be improper. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a while. "Sure." "Why are you not settled somewhere? You must be, what, 27, 28? Most men your age have a place of their own by now." 28, he confirmed. "And I guess I have just never found a place that felt like home. Been drifting since I was 16, working different ranches, different towns. Never stayed anywhere longer than a season or 2. You want to settle down." He was quiet for a moment, staring out at the mountains. "I think I do," he said finally. "I think I am tired of drifting. Tired of not having anything that is mine, anyone who cares whether I come or go." "What kind of place would you want? If you could have anything," Cole smiled, a wistful expression crossing his face. "Something like this, actually. A small ranch, good land, mountains all around. A place where I could build something that would last. Maybe raise some horses, have a family someday." He glanced at her. "What about you? What do you want?" The question caught her off guard. She had spent so long just trying to survive that she had stopped thinking about what she actually wanted. "I want this place to survive," she said slowly. "I want to honor what Samuel and I built together, but I also—" She trailed off, not sure how to put the feeling into words. "You also what?" "I do not want to be alone anymore," she whispered. The admission felt like ripping open a wound, exposing her deepest vulnerability. I am so tired of being alone. Cole reached over and took her hand. His palm was rough and calloused, but his touch was gentle. You are not alone, he said softly. Not anymore. She looked down at their joined hands, feeling tears prick her eyes. I do not know how to do this, she admitted. I do not know how to let someone help me, how to let someone in. You are already doing it. He squeezed her hand gently. Every time you let me stay. Every time you work beside me instead of fighting me. Every time you smile at one of my terrible jokes, you are already doing it. Tessa let out a shaky laugh. Your jokes are pretty terrible. See, that is exactly what I mean. They sat there as the sun sank below the mountains and the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky. Cole did not let go of her hand, and Tessa did not pull away. It was the most intimate moment she had shared with anyone since Samuel died, and it terrified her. But it also felt right in a way she could not explain. As the weeks passed, Tessa found herself looking forward to Cole's arrival each morning with an eagerness that both thrilled and frightened her. She started waking earlier so she could make coffee before he arrived. She began wearing her better dress instead of her oldest work clothes. She caught herself watching him when he was not looking, admiring the way his muscles moved under his shirt, the way he handled the horses with such gentle strength, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. She was falling for him, and the realization both exhilarated and terrified her. It felt like a betrayal of Samuel's memory, like she was abandoning the love they had shared. But at the same time, she could not deny the way her heart lifted when she saw Cole, the way her skin tingled when he touched her hand, the way the world seemed brighter when he was near. One afternoon in late August, they were working together to harvest what little hay had grown in the upper meadow. It was hard, hot work, and by midday they were both exhausted and dripping with sweat. They took a break by the creek, sitting in the shade of a cottonwood tree and drinking cool water from the canteen. I have been thinking, Cole said, his tone casual but his eyes serious. Winter is coming in a few months. You are going to need more help getting this place ready. Tessa stiffened slightly. I will manage. I know you will, but it would be easier if you had someone here permanently, someone who could help with the heavy work, keep an eye on things. Are you offering to stay? I am offering more than that. He set down the canteen and turned to face her fully. Tessa, I know this might seem sudden, and I know you probably think I am crazy, but I want to be honest with you about what I am feeling. Her heart started pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. What are you feeling? I am falling in love with you, he said simply. Actually, I think I fell in love with you the first day I saw you in that mercantile, counting out those coins with your chin up and your shoulders back, refusing to let anyone see how much you were struggling. You are the strongest, most stubborn, most beautiful woman I have ever met, and I do not want to drift anymore. I want to stay here. With you. Tessa could not breathe. The words she had been longing to hear and dreading in equal measure hung in the air between them. Cole, You do not have to say anything right now, he said quickly. I know you are still grieving. I know you might not be ready for this. I just wanted you to know how I feel and that I am not going anywhere unless you tell me to go. I do not want you to go, she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. I do not want you to ever go. His face lit up with such pure joy that it took her breath away. Does that mean? It means I am scared, she interrupted. It means I do not know what I am doing or if I am ready for this. But it also means that when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is seeing you. It means that when you smile at me, I feel like maybe everything might actually be all right. It means that I am falling in love with you too, and I do not know what to do about it. Cole reached out and cupped her face in his hands, his touch infinitely tender. You do not have to do anything except let me stay. Let me be here for you. Let me help you rebuild this place, not because you cannot do it alone, but because we can do it better together. I am not ready to marry again, she whispered. Not yet. That is all right, I can wait. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I can wait as long as you need. What if I am never ready? Then I will stay anyway if you will have me. As your hired hand, as your friend, as whatever you need me to be. She searched his eyes, looking for any sign of deception or ulterior motive, but found only honesty and warmth and something deeper, something that looked like forever. Why? She asked. Why would you give up so much for someone like me? Because you are not just someone, he said. You are everything. And then he kissed her, soft and gentle and sweet, and Tessa felt something inside her chest that had been frozen for 2 years finally begin to thaw. She kissed him back, tentatively at first and then with growing confidence, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders as he pulled her closer. It was different from kissing Samuel, different but equally wonderful in its own way. It tasted like hope and new beginnings and the promise of something good to come. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. Cole rested his forehead against hers and smiled. I have wanted to do that for weeks. You should have done it sooner, she said, and was rewarded by his delighted laugh. They spent the rest of the afternoon working side by side, but everything felt different now. The air seemed charged with electricity, and every accidental touch sent sparks racing through Tessa's body. By the time evening came, she felt more alive than she had in years. That night, Cole stayed for dinner again, and afterward they sat on the porch talking until the stars filled the sky. He told her about his childhood in Missouri, about the parents he lost to cholera when he was 14, about the years he spent wandering from place to place looking for something he could not name. She told him about growing up in Ohio, about meeting Samuel at a church social, about the dreams they had shared of building a life in the West. You still love him? Cole asked, and there was no jealousy in his voice, just curiosity and understanding. I always will, Tessa said honestly. He was my first love and he gave me 3 good years, but I think, she paused, searching for the right words, I think loving you does not mean I stop loving him, it just means my heart is big enough for both. Cole reached over and took her hand. I would never ask you to forget him or stop loving him. He was part of making you who you are, and I love who you are. She squeezed his hand, feeling tears prick her eyes. How did I get so lucky to find you? Pretty sure I am the lucky one. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Tessa said, You can stay in the barn if you want. It is getting too cold at night to camp by the creek. Are you sure? I am sure. There is a room in the loft where Samuel used to store hay. It is dry and warm enough. Better than sleeping on the ground. Thank you. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. For everything. After Cole left for the barn that night, Tessa lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Everything was changing so fast, and part of her wanted to pull back, to protect herself from the possibility of being hurt again. But a larger part of her was ready to take the risk, ready to open her heart and see where this new path might lead. The next few weeks passed in a blur of hard work and growing affection. Cole moved into the barn loft, and Tessa found herself inviting him to share breakfast and dinner with her every day. They worked together from dawn to dusk, preparing the ranch for winter. They cut and stacked firewood, reinforced the barn against the coming snows, and brought the cattle down to the lower pasture where they could be monitored more easily. But they also found time for softer moments. Cole brought her wildflowers he found while checking the fence lines. They took rides together on Sunday afternoons, exploring the mountain trails and talking about everything and nothing. He taught her to play poker, and she taught him to make apple pie with the fruit from the gnarled tree behind the cabin. Every evening ended with them sitting on the porch, holding hands and watching the stars emerge. One night in mid-September, a cold wind blew down from the mountains, carrying the scent of snow. Tessa shivered despite the shawl wrapped around her shoulders, and Cole immediately put his arm around her, pulling her close. "Winter is coming early this year," he observed. "It always does up here." She nestled against his warmth, feeling safe and content. "Are you sure you want to stay?" "It gets brutal. Sometimes we get snowed in for weeks at a time. I have lived through plenty of Colorado winters. I am not worried." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Besides, I cannot think of anywhere I would rather be snowed in than here with you." She tilted her head back to look at him. "I have been thinking about something." "What is that? About us? About the future?" She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I do not want to wait any more, Cole. I do not want to keep holding back because I am scared or because I think it is too soon. Life is too short and too uncertain. I lost Samuel because I thought we had all the time in the world and we did not. I do not want to make that mistake again." Cole's arm tightened around her. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I love you. I am saying that I want you to stay, not just for the winter but forever. I am saying that if you still want to marry me, my answer is yes." For a moment he just stared at her, his eyes wide with surprise and hope. Then a huge grin spread across his face. "You mean it? You really mean it?" "I really mean it." He let out a whoop of joy and pulled her into a fierce hug, lifting her right off the porch step. She laughed, startled and delighted, as he spun her around. When he finally set her down, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her deeply, pouring all his love and happiness into that single kiss. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless and grinning like fools. "When?" Cole asked. "When can we get married?" "As soon as possible. Maybe we can go into town next week and talk to the preacher." "Next week sounds perfect." He kissed her again, softer this time. "I love you, Tessa Morgan. I am going to spend the rest of my life making you happy." "I love you too, Cole Wheeler, and I am going to hold you to that promise." They went into Westcliff the following Saturday, driving the wagon together through the bright autumn morning. The aspens on the mountainsides had turned gold, and the air was crisp and cool and filled with the promise of change. Tessa wore her best dress, a dark blue calico that she had not worn since before Samuel died, and Cole had cleaned up and shaved, looking so handsome that she could hardly take her eyes off him. The preacher, Reverend Matthews, was an elderly man with kind eyes and a gentle manner. He listened as they explained their situation and agreed to perform the ceremony the following Saturday. "It does my heart good to see love blooming again," he said, patting Tessa's hand. "Samuel would want you to be happy, my dear. He would not want you to spend the rest of your life alone." After leaving the church, they stopped at the mercantile. This time, when Mr. Henderson tallied up their purchases, Tessa had enough money to pay. Cole had been saving his earnings from odd jobs around town, and he insisted on using them to stock up on supplies for the winter. They bought flour and sugar and coffee, salt pork and dried beans, lamp oil and matches, and a dozen other necessities. As they loaded the supplies into the wagon, Tessa felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. 6 months ago, she had been standing in this very spot, counting coins and trying to decide between flour and coffee. She had been alone and desperate and too proud to ask for help. And now here she was, about to marry a wonderful man who loved her, with a wagon full of supplies and hope burning bright in her chest. "You all right?" Cole asked, noticing her faraway expression. "I am better than all right," she said, smiling up at him. "I am happy." He grinned and leaned down to kiss her right there on Main Street, not caring who might see. A few passers-by smiled and whispered, but Tessa did not care. Let them talk. She had spent too long worrying about what other people thought, about maintaining her pride and her independence. She was done with that. She was ready to embrace this new life with open arms. The week before the wedding passed in a flurry of activity. Tessa cleaned the cabin from top to bottom, and Cole built a larger bed frame to replace the narrow one she had been sleeping in. He also expanded the closet and added shelves for his belongings. They were creating a space that belonged to both of them, a home they would share. On Friday evening, the night before the wedding, Cole stayed in the barn as usual. It would not have been proper to spend the night in the cabin before they were married, even though they had been living and working together for months. Tessa lay awake for a long time that night, thinking about the vows she would make the next day. She felt a pang of sadness as she thought about Samuel, but it was a gentle sadness, tinged with gratitude for the time they had shared. She hoped he would understand. She hoped he would approve of Cole and be happy that she had found love again. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, with a fresh dusting of snow on the highest peaks. Tessa put on the dark blue dress again, along with her mother's pearl earrings that she had brought from Ohio. She brushed her hair until it shone and pinned it up in a soft style that framed her face. When she looked at herself in the small mirror, she was surprised to see how different she looked. The haunted, desperate expression was gone, replaced by something softer and more hopeful. Cole met her at the wagon, looking nervous and excited in a clean shirt and a string tie. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Thank you. You look very handsome." They drove into town together, sitting close on the wagon seat, their shoulders touching. A few neighbors and friends had gathered at the church, having heard about the wedding through the town grapevine. Mrs. Patterson from the boarding house was there, along with the family from the neighboring ranch who had given them the venison. Even Mr. Henderson from the mercantile had come, looking slightly awkward but sincere in his congratulations. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. Reverend Matthews spoke about love and commitment, about the importance of partnership in building a life together. When it came time for the vows, Tessa spoke clearly and firmly, meaning every word. Cole's voice shook slightly with emotion, but his eyes never left hers, shining with love and promise. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed her gently, reverently, as if she were something precious and fragile. The small congregation applauded, and Tessa felt tears of joy slide down her cheeks. After the ceremony, Mrs. Patterson hosted a small reception at the boarding house. There was cake and coffee, and the neighbors brought dishes to share. It was not elaborate, but it was warm and genuine, and Tessa felt surrounded by community in a way she had not experienced since moving to Colorado. People came up to congratulate them, to wish them well, to express their pleasure at seeing Tessa happy again. Late in the afternoon, they drove back to the ranch, now officially man and wife. Cole helped her down from the wagon and then, to her surprise, swept her up in his arms. "What are you doing?" she asked, laughing. "Carrying my bride over the threshold. It is tradition." He carried her into the cabin and set her down gently in the middle of the room. "Welcome home, Mrs. Wheeler." "It feels strange to be called that," she admitted, "but good strange. Like starting a new chapter." "That is exactly what we are doing." He pulled her close and kissed her thoroughly, starting a new chapter together. That night they consummated their marriage, and it was sweet and tender and passionate all at once. Cole was patient and gentle, taking his time to make sure she was comfortable and happy. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the new bed, talking quietly in the darkness. Tessa traced patterns on his chest with her fingertips, marveling at how natural it felt to be with him, how right it all seemed. "I never thought I would feel this way again," she whispered. I thought that part of my life was over. I am glad you were wrong." He kissed the top of her head. "I promise I am going to take care of you, Tessa. Not because you cannot take care of yourself, but because I want to, because we are partners now in everything." "Partners," she repeated, liking the sound of the word. "I like that." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, and for the first time in 2 years, Tessa slept peacefully through the entire night, untroubled by nightmares or worry. The winter that followed was harsh, just as Tessa had predicted. Snow fell heavily in November and did not let up until March. There were days when they could not even open the cabin door because of the drifts piled against it. But Tessa did not mind. She had Cole by her side, and that made all the difference. They worked together to care for the animals, to keep the cabin warm, to pass the long dark evenings. Cole taught her to play checkers and read aloud from the few books they owned. She taught him to knit, and he surprised her by being quite good at it. In February, during a brief thaw, Cole rode into town and came back with a surprise: a pair of young horses he had purchased from a rancher who was selling off his stock. "I have been thinking," he said as he led the horses into the barn. "Once spring comes, we should start breeding horses. There is good money in it, and we have the land and the facilities." Tessa looked at the horses, a pretty bay mare and a sturdy black gelding, and felt excitement stir in her chest. "You know how to train horses. I have worked with them my whole life. I can train them for ranch work or for riding or both. We could build a real business here, Tessa, something that would bring in steady income and help us expand." She threw her arms around his neck and kissed him. "That sounds wonderful. Let us do it." When spring finally arrived, they threw themselves into the work with renewed energy. Cole began training the new horses while Tessa focused on expanding the vegetable garden and getting the cattle back into good condition. The winter snows had left plenty of moisture in the ground, and the grass grew lush and green. It was going to be a good year, they could both feel it. In April, Tessa realized she had missed her monthly courses. At first, she thought it was just stress or the changing weather, but when she missed a second month and began feeling queasy in the mornings, she knew what it meant. She was pregnant. She waited until she was sure before telling Cole. One evening after dinner, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, she took his hand and placed it on her still flat belly. "There is a baby in there," she said softly. "Our baby." Cole's eyes went wide with shock and then filled with tears. "Really? You are really pregnant?" "I am really pregnant. Due sometime in late November or early December, I think." He pulled her into his arms and held her tight, his whole body shaking with emotion. "A baby," he whispered. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Happy does not even begin to cover it. He pulled back to look at her, his face radiant with joy. "I am going to be a father. We are going to be parents. This is the best news I have ever received in my entire life." Tessa laughed, feeling giddy with happiness. "We are going to need to expand the cabin, add a room for the baby." "I will start on it tomorrow." He kissed her tenderly. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me this gift, for giving me a family, for giving me everything I have ever wanted." "Thank you for not giving up on me," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for offering help when I was too proud to ask for it. Thank you for changing my life." They sat together as the sun sank below the mountains, their hands intertwined, their hearts full. The ranch that had once seemed like a burden now felt like a blessing, a place where they could build a future and raise a family. The drought was over, the hard times were behind them, and everything was finally, beautifully right. Cole was true to his word and began building an addition onto the cabin the very next day. He worked tirelessly through the spring and summer, constructing a nursery with a large window that looked out toward the mountains. He built a cradle from smooth pine wood and sanded it, until it was soft as silk. Tessa sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her heart swelling with anticipation for the little life growing inside her. As her belly grew rounder, Cole became even more attentive and protective. He insisted she take frequent rests and would not let her do any heavy lifting. At first, Tessa chafed against the restrictions, her independent nature rebelling against being coddled. But she soon realized that he was not trying to treat her as weak or incapable. He was simply showing his love and care in the way he knew how. The horse breeding business began to take off. Word spread through the valley that Cole Wheeler had a way with horses, and soon ranchers from as far as 50 miles away were bringing their animals to be trained. Cole worked with each horse patiently and skillfully, and his reputation grew. By midsummer, they had more business than they could handle, and the money coming in allowed them to pay off the bank note on the ranch and even put some savings aside. In August, they hired a young man named Daniel to help with the heavy work around the ranch. Daniel was 18, hardworking and eager to learn, and he proved to be a valuable addition to their small operation. With his help, Cole was able to focus more on the horse training while Tessa managed the household and prepared for the baby's arrival. One warm evening in September, as they sat together watching the stars emerge, Tessa said, "I have been thinking about names." "Oh," Cole smiled and placed his hand on her swollen belly, feeling the baby kick against his palm. "If it is a boy, I would like to name him Carson." "Carson Samuel Wheeler, after my father and after Samuel." Cole was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I think that is perfect, and if it is a girl, I was thinking maybe Catherine Rose Wheeler." Catherine was my grandmother's name, and I always loved it. Both beautiful names for our beautiful baby. He leaned over and kissed her belly gently. "We cannot wait to meet you, little one." As autumn arrived and the aspen leaves turned gold again, Tessa grew increasingly uncomfortable. Her back ached constantly, and she had trouble sleeping. But she also felt a sense of deep contentment and peace. She had come so far from that desperate woman counting coins in the mercantile. She had a loving husband, a thriving ranch, a baby on the way, and a future full of promise. In late November, on a cold night when the first snow of winter was falling softly outside, Tessa's labor began. Cole rode through the darkness to fetch Mrs. Patterson, who had experience as a midwife, and then spent the next 12 hours pacing the cabin floor while Tessa labored in the bedroom. It was the longest night of his life, made bearable only by Mrs. Patterson's calm assurances that everything was progressing normally. Just before dawn, as the snow stopped falling and the sky began to lighten in the east, a baby's cry pierced the air. Cole rushed into the bedroom to find Tessa exhausted but beaming, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. "It is a boy," she said, her voice hoarse but happy. "Come meet your son, Cole." With trembling hands, Cole took the baby from her and gazed down at the tiny, perfect face. The infant had a cap of dark hair and was already waving his little fists in the air. "Hello, Carson," Cole whispered. "Hello, my son." Tears streamed down his face as he carefully placed the baby back in Tessa's arms and then wrapped them both in a gentle embrace. "You did so well," he murmured against her hair. "I am so proud of you, so grateful for you." "We made him together," Tessa said, gazing down at their son with infinite love. "He is ours, Cole, our family." Mrs. Patterson stayed for a few days to help with the baby, and to make sure Tessa recovered properly from the birth. Once she was satisfied that both mother and child were healthy, she returned to town, leaving the new family to adjust to their changed circumstances. Those first weeks with a newborn were exhausting but wonderful. Carson was a good baby, healthy and strong, with a lusty cry that could wake the dead. Cole proved to be a devoted father, getting up in the middle of the night to change diapers and pacing the floor with the baby when he fussed. Daniel took on more of the ranch work so that Cole could spend time with his new family. As winter settled in again, the Wheeler family created new rhythms and routines. Tessa nursed the baby while Cole read aloud or played his harmonica. They took turns rocking Carson to sleep and marveled together at every tiny milestone: his first smile, his first laugh, the way he would grip their fingers with surprising strength. One evening in January, as they sat by the fire with Carson sleeping peacefully in his cradle, Cole said, "I have been thinking about the future." "What about it?" Tessa looked up from the socks she was darning. "I think we should buy more land. There is a parcel adjacent to ours that is coming up for sale in the spring. If we could acquire it, we would have enough grazing land to double our cattle herd and still have plenty of room for the horses." Tessa considered this. "Can we afford it?" "With the money we have been making from the horse training, plus what we can save between now and spring, I think we can. It would be a big investment, but I think it would pay off in the long run. We could build something really substantial here, Tessa. Something to pass down to Carson and any other children we might have." "Other children?" She smiled at him. "You are already thinking about more babies." "Maybe not right away," he said with a grin. "But eventually, yes, I would love to have a big family. What about you?" "I think I would like that too." She set aside her darning and moved to sit beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. "I like the idea of this house being filled with children and laughter, of building something that will last beyond us. Then let us do it. Let us buy that land and keep growing." They purchased the additional land that spring, taking out a small loan to supplement their savings. It was a risk, but it was a calculated one, and they were both confident in their ability to make it work. Throughout the summer and fall, they worked harder than ever, expanding their operation and building their reputation throughout the valley. Carson grew from an infant to a lively toddler, taking his first steps on his first birthday and speaking his first words shortly after. He was a happy child, curious and bold, with his mother's determination and his father's easy smile. Tessa and Cole delighted in watching him explore the world, getting into everything and bringing constant joy to their lives. In the spring of 1881, Tessa discovered she was pregnant again. This time, she was more prepared and less nervous. Cole was thrilled, of course, and immediately began making plans to expand the nursery to accommodate 2 children. Their daughter, Catherine Rose, was born in December of 1881, a tiny delicate thing with wispy blonde hair and her father's blue eyes. Carson, now 2 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister and wanted to help with everything. Tessa had to constantly remind him to be gentle, but his enthusiasm was endearing. The years that followed were busy and full. The ranch continued to prosper, and the Wheeler name became well known throughout southern Colorado for quality horses and fair dealing. They hired more help as the operation grew, eventually employing 3 full-time ranch hands. The original cabin was expanded several more times, growing into a comfortable family home with multiple bedrooms, a large kitchen, and a spacious living area. In 1883, Tessa gave birth to twin boys, James and Joseph, who kept everyone on their toes with their mischievous antics and boundless energy. In 1886, another daughter arrived, named Grace Ann. The house was indeed filled with children and laughter, just as Tessa and Cole had dreamed. Through all the challenges and triumphs, through hard work and late nights and moments of exhaustion, Tessa and Cole remained deeply in love. They still made time to sit together on the porch on summer evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset like they had in those early days. They still laughed together, still supported each other, still chose each other every single day. One evening in the summer of 1890, as they celebrated their 12th wedding anniversary, Tessa reflected on how far they had come. Carson was nearly 12 years old now, tall and capable, already helping with the horses. Catherine was 8, sweet and artistic, always drawing pictures or making up songs. The twins were 7, still wild but starting to settle down, and Grace was 4, the baby of the family who had everyone wrapped around her little finger. "Can you believe it has been 12 years?" she asked Cole as they stood together on the porch, watching their children play in the yard. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday," he said, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Other times it feels like I have loved you forever." "I am so glad you did not give up on me," she said, leaning into his embrace. "I was so stubborn, so determined to do everything alone. If you had not kept coming back, if you had not offered help when I refused to ask for it, you would have figured it out eventually," Cole said with quiet confidence. "You are the strongest person I know, Tessa, but I am glad I could be here to help, glad we could build this life together." "I love you," she said, turning to face him. "I loved Samuel, and I will always be grateful for the time we had. But what we have built together, Cole, this family, this life, this love, it is more than I ever dreamed possible. You gave me everything." "You gave me everything," he corrected gently. "You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me a reason to stop drifting and start building. You gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. You gave me yourself." He kissed her then, sweet and tender, and Tessa felt the same flutter in her chest that she had felt all those years ago when he first kissed her by the creek. Some things never changed, and that was one of them. Her love for this man, for the life they had created together, would never fade. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, the Wheeler family gathered on the porch together. The children chased fireflies in the gathering dusk while Tessa and Cole watched from the porch steps, their shoulders touching, their hands intertwined. "Papa," Carson called out, "tell us again about how you and Mama met." Cole smiled and glanced at Tessa, who nodded her encouragement. This was a story their children never tired of hearing. "Well," Cole began, settling back against the porch post. "It was a hot summer day in July, and I had just ridden into Westcliff looking for work. I saw your Mama in the mercantile, counting out coins, trying to decide what she could afford to buy. She stood there with her chin up and her shoulders back, refusing to let anyone see how hard things were for her. And I thought to myself, that is the bravest woman I have ever seen." "And then what happened?" Catherine asked, even though she had heard the story a dozen times. "Then I followed her outside and offered her my help. And you know what she said? She told you to go away." The twins shouted in unison, giggling. "That is right. She told me she did not need any help and that she was managing just fine on her own. But I could see that she did need help, even if she was too proud to ask for it. So I came back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. I just kept showing up, kept offering help, kept being there even when she told me to leave." "Because you loved her," Carson said, grinning. "Because I loved her," Cole confirmed, looking at Tessa with such tenderness that it made her heart ache. "And eventually she let me stay. She let me help. She let me love her. And that was the best decision I ever made, to keep coming back, to not give up, to be there for her, even when she insisted she did not need anyone. And the best decision I ever made," Tessa added, "was to let go of my pride and accept the help I needed. To open my heart to love again, even though I was scared. To take a chance on a stubborn cowboy who would not take no for an answer." The children laughed and then ran off to continue their games. Tessa leaned her head on Cole's shoulder, feeling utterly content. This was what happiness looked like. A home filled with love, children playing in the yard, a partner who chose you every day, a life built on faith and hard work and the courage to be vulnerable. The years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and new joys. The children grew up strong and capable, each finding their own path in life. Carson took over the horse training business and eventually bought land of his own adjacent to the family ranch. Catherine married a schoolteacher and moved to Denver, where she raised her own family. The twins went into business together, opening a feed and supply store in Westcliff. Grace, the youngest, surprised everyone by becoming a veterinarian, one of the first female vets in Colorado. Through it all, Tessa and Cole remained the heart of the family. They grew older together, their hair turning gray, their hands becoming more gnarled with age, but their love never diminishing. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, still held hands, still chose each other. In the spring of 1915, they celebrated their 37th wedding anniversary surrounded by their children, their grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The ranch had grown into one of the most successful operations in the valley, and the Wheeler name was synonymous with integrity and quality. As the sun set that evening, casting golden light across the mountains, Cole took Tessa's hand and said, "If I could go back and do it all again, I would not change a single thing." "Not even that first day when I told you to leave me alone?" she asked with a smile. "Especially not that day. Because that was the day I met the woman who changed my life forever. The woman who taught me what it means to be truly brave, truly strong, truly loved." Tessa squeezed his hand, her eyes filling with happy tears. "I am so grateful you were too stubborn to listen to me. So grateful you offered help when I was too proud to ask for it. You saved me, Cole, in every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," he said softly, "and we built something beautiful together." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge, their grandchildren playing in the yard, their children talking and laughing nearby. This was their legacy, a family bound by love, a ranch that had weathered every storm, and a love story that would be told for generations to come. Years later, when their great-grandchildren would ask about the old days, about how the ranch came to be, about how their great-grandparents met, the story would always be told the same way. It was the story of a proud woman who had lost everything and refused to ask for help, and a stubborn cowboy who offered it anyway. It was a story about courage and vulnerability, about the strength it takes to accept help and the generosity it takes to offer it. It was a story about love that bloomed in the harsh landscape of the Colorado mountains, love that weathered droughts and blizzards and hardship, love that built something lasting and true. And it was a story with a happy ending, because Tessa and Cole lived out the rest of their days together on that ranch, surrounded by the family they had created and the love they had nurtured. They passed away within months of each other in the winter of 1918, leaving behind a legacy that would endure for generations. The ranch still stands today, still operated by Wheeler descendants, still a testament to what two people can build when they have courage, determination, and love. And on summer evenings, if you stand on that old porch and watch the sunset over the mountains, you can almost feel their presence there, a proud woman and a stubborn cowboy, holding hands and watching the stars emerge, their love as eternal as the mountains themselves. Their story became part of the fabric of Westcliff's history, told and retold until it took on an almost mythical quality. But those who knew them, who had witnessed their love firsthand, knew that no myth could capture the true depth of what they had shared. It was a love born of mutual respect and admiration, of patience and persistence, of choosing each other day after day, year after year, through all the joys and sorrows life brought their way. The greatest lesson of their story was this: that pride can be both a strength and a weakness, that asking for help is not a sign of failure but of wisdom, and that love has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. Tessa had been too proud to beg for help, but Cole had offered it anyway, not because he thought her weak, but because he saw her strength and wanted to stand beside her. And in that simple act of kindness, in that persistent offer of assistance and companionship, they had found something neither had been looking for but both desperately needed: a partner, a soulmate, a love that would last a lifetime and beyond. Their children would often reflect on the gift their parents had given them: not just a thriving ranch or material wealth, but the example of a marriage built on genuine partnership, mutual support, and enduring love. Carson would tell his own children that the greatest thing his father ever taught him was to show up, to be present, to offer help even when it seemed unwanted. Catherine would tell her daughters that her mother taught her the importance of vulnerability, of letting down your guard and allowing others to see your struggles, of accepting help with grace. The twins learned from watching their parents work side by side that true partnership meant sharing both the burdens and the joys, that no task was beneath either partner, that love was expressed as much in daily acts of service as in grand romantic gestures. And Grace, the youngest, learned that it was never too late to start over, that loss did not have to be the end of the story, that hope and love could bloom even in the harshest conditions. As decades passed, and the 20th century brought changes to the West, automobiles replacing wagons, electricity reaching even remote ranches, the wild frontier becoming settled and tame, the Wheeler Ranch remained a constant, a place where family gathered and stories were told, and the legacy of Tessa and Cole lived on. The cabin, expanded many times over the years, still contained the original structure that Samuel had built and that Cole had helped preserve. The barn where Cole had first slept in the loft was still standing, though reinforced and modernized. The pastures where they had struggled to keep cattle alive during the drought were now lush and green, supporting both cattle and the horses that had become the ranch's trademark. In the summer of 1950, on what would have been Tessa and Cole's 72nd wedding anniversary, the family gathered for a massive reunion. Over 100 descendants came from all over Colorado and beyond, filling the ranch with laughter and life. They shared stories of Tessa and Cole, passed down through generations, each tale polished and perfected through countless retellings. Carson, now an elderly man himself, stood on the porch where his parents had spent so many evenings and addressed the assembled family. "My father used to say that the best decision he ever made was to keep showing up," Carson said, his voice strong despite his 89 years. He said that love is not just about the big moments or the grand gestures. It is about showing up every day, offering help even when it is not asked for, being there even when it is hard. That is what he did for my mother. That is what they did for each other, every day of their lives together. And that is the legacy they left us, not just this ranch, not just our family name, but the example of what true love looks like. The family applauded, many wiping away tears. They spent the rest of the day celebrating, sharing meals, telling stories, reinforcing the bonds that tied them all together. And as the sun set over the mountains that evening, 3 generations of Wheelers gathered on that same porch, looking out at the land that Tessa and Cole had fought so hard to preserve, feeling their presence in every board and beam, in every blade of grass, in every breath of mountain air. The story of Tessa Morgan and Cole Wheeler became more than just a family tale. It became a parable about the power of persistence, about the importance of accepting help, about the courage it takes to be vulnerable, and the generosity it takes to offer support without judgment. It reminded people that pride, while valuable, should never stand in the way of connection, and that sometimes the greatest strength we can show is in admitting we need help. Their love story proved that it is never too late for a second chance, that grief does not have to be the end of joy, that new love does not diminish old love, but expands the heart's capacity. It showed that real partnership means working side by side, supporting each other's strengths and shoring up each other's weaknesses, celebrating victories together and weathering defeats together. And perhaps most importantly, their story demonstrated that love is a choice made every single day. Cole chose to keep showing up day after day, even when Tessa told him to leave. Tessa chose to let down her guard, to accept help, to risk her heart again despite her fear. And then, for 37 years of marriage and even beyond death, they chose each other, over and over, in countless small ways that added up to a lifetime of devotion. The ranch continues to thrive into the 21st century, still operated by Wheeler descendants who honor the legacy of their ancestors, by maintaining the values of hard work, integrity, and community that Tessa and Cole embodied. The horse training program that Cole started over 140 years ago is still renowned throughout Colorado. The land that Tessa fought so hard to preserve is still beautiful and productive, still home to cattle and horses and the family that loves it. And on quiet summer evenings, when the work is done and the mountains are bathed in the golden light of sunset, current generations of Wheelers still gather on that porch. They still watch the stars emerge in the vast Colorado sky. They still tell the story of a proud woman who would not beg for help and a stubborn cowboy who offered it anyway. They still honor the love that built their family, their home, their legacy, because some stories are more than just stories. Some stories are blueprints for how to live, how to love, how to be human. And the story of Tessa and Cole Wheeler is one of those stories, a testament to the power of persistence, the importance of vulnerability, the strength of partnership, and the enduring nature of true love. Their tale reminds us that we all need help sometimes, and that accepting it is not weakness but wisdom. It reminds us that offering help, especially to those too proud to ask for it, is one of the most generous acts we can perform. It reminds us that love can bloom in the most unlikely circumstances, that second chances are possible, that hope is never truly lost. And so the story lives on, told and retold, a source of inspiration and comfort, a reminder that even in the harshest landscapes, whether those landscapes are geographical or emotional, love can take root and flourish. That even when we think we are at our lowest, when pride is all we have left, someone might come along and offer us exactly what we need, if only we have the courage to accept it. Tessa was too proud to beg for help. Cole offered it anyway. And from that simple beginning grew a love that transcended time, a family that spanned generations, and a legacy that will endure as long as the mountains stand and the stars shine over the Colorado sky. It was a love story for the ages, written in the Wild West, lived in the high mountain valley, and remembered forever in the hearts of all who hear it. And it was, in every sense of the word, a happily ever after.